Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's World News. We've got a packed show today covering some of the biggest stories shaking the globe right now. So let's get straight into it. First up, the ongoing war involving Iran is doing serious damage to global energy markets. But for at least one major oil company, it's been nothing short of a windfall. According to the Financial Times, BP has described the most recent quarter as exceptional for its oil trading division. The reason? The conflict has triggered a massive energy shock, sending traders and refineries scrambling to lock down whatever oil cargoes they can find. With supply routes disrupted and uncertainty sky-high, price volatility has gone through the roof. And that's exactly the kind of environment where experienced energy traders make their biggest gains. BP's traders have clearly been capitalizing. But while the profits are rolling in for the energy giants, ordinary consumers and businesses around the world are feeling the pinch at the pump and in their energy bills. This story is far from over. The ripple effects of this conflict are being felt from Singapore to Wall Street, and we'll be touching on those throughout today's show. Staying on the Iran story, the diplomatic fallout is intensifying at the highest levels. The Financial Times is reporting that Chinese President Xi Jinping has issued a stark warning, saying the world is now beset by disarray as the conflict involving Iran drags on. Xi's comments come as Donald Trump has publicly claimed that Iran is eager to reach a deal, even as a U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz remains in effect. That blockade is one of the most consequential moves in the conflict so far. The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow passage through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply flows, so its disruption alone explains a lot of what we're seeing in energy markets right now. Meanwhile, also from the Financial Times, life inside Iran itself has become increasingly cut off from the outside world. The report details how the Iranian regime has severed internet access for its population since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks back in February. Iranians are describing a daily existence of isolation, with VPNs and workarounds becoming lifelines. It's a stark reminder that behind the geopolitical headlines are millions of real people dealing with the consequences on the ground. Now let's head to Canada, where there's been a major political development. The Financial Times is reporting that Prime Minister Mark Carney and his Liberal Party have secured a majority in the Canadian Parliament. This is a significant milestone for Carney, who has spent recent months working to consolidate his position, including luring over members of Parliament from rival parties. The backdrop to all of this is the ongoing pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump, who has made repeated threats toward Canada. Carney has been positioning himself as the leader best equipped to stand up to Washington and protect Canadian interests in trade and sovereignty debates. A parliamentary majority now gives Carney much more room to maneuver. He can push legislation through without needing to negotiate with opposition parties at every turn. For Canadians, this represents a clearer political mandate heading into what promises to be a turbulent period in North American relations. Watch this space, because the Canada-US dynamic is going to be one of the defining political stories of 2026. This next story is deeply troubling. BBC News has uncovered evidence of a disturbing practice at Greece's borders. According to the BBC's investigation, Greek authorities have allegedly been recruiting migrants, described as masked mercenaries, and using them to forcibly push other migrants back across the border in what are known as pushback operations. The BBC reports that this practice has been going on since at least 2020. Pushbacks are considered illegal under international law because they deny migrants the right to claim asylum. The fact that authorities may be using other migrants to carry out these operations adds another deeply troubling layer to an already controversial border enforcement strategy. This revelation is likely to put serious pressure on the Greek government and the European Union to respond. Human rights organizations have long argued that pushbacks are a violation of EU law and international conventions. With this new reporting from the BBC bringing fresh evidence into the public domain, the calls for accountability are going to get a lot louder. Switching gears to the tech world now, and there are growing questions around one of the most talked about companies on the planet. The Financial Times is reporting that investors in OpenAI are starting to push back on the company's eye-watering $852 billion valuation, especially as its strategic direction appears to be shifting under CEO Sam Altman. Altman is reportedly refocusing the company, but some investors are growing nervous, particularly as rival AI firm Anthropic is gaining ground and challenging OpenAI's early dominance in the space. The concern among some backers seems to be whether the current valuation is truly justified given the evolving competitive landscape. For context, an $852 billion valuation would make OpenAI one of the most valuable companies ever, and it's not even publicly traded yet. That kind of number demands an almost flawless execution of strategy going forward. With Anthropic snapping at its heels and the broader AI industry evolving at breakneck speed, the pressure on Altman and his team to deliver is immense. This is absolutely a story we'll be keeping a close eye on. Back to the economic fallout from the Middle East conflict, and China is not immune. The Financial Times reports that Chinese exports have slowed noticeably, with the turmoil in the region weighing heavily on global trade flows. Rising fuel costs are making shipping more expensive, and disruptions to key trade routes are complicating logistics for Chinese exporters. Interestingly, though, the same report notes a surge in Chinese imports, driven largely by soaring fuel prices and increased spending on tech components. So while China's outbound trade is taking a hit, it's spending more to keep its domestic economy and manufacturing sector running. This ties into a broader story the Financial Times has also been covering, what some analysts are calling China Shock 2.0. Chinese companies, backed by heavy government subsidies and operating at enormous scale, are pushing aggressively into the world's most advanced industries, from electric vehicles to semiconductors. Even as exports slow in the short term, China's long-term industrial strategy is accelerating. That combination of short-term disruption and long-term ambition is something global policymakers are watching very carefully. And finally, before we wrap up, a warning sign from the heart of American finance. The Financial Times reports that Wall Street's once booming mergers and acquisitions machine is sputtering. Goldman Sachs has issued a warning that its deal pipeline has shrunk considerably, and that's being read as a serious red flag for the broader M&A market. When Goldman Sachs talks, financial markets listen. The bank is one of the premier deal makers on the planet, so a shrinking pipeline at Goldman suggests that corporate executives and boards are pulling back from big transactions amid uncertainty. And with the Iran conflict shaking energy prices and trade tensions running high, there's no shortage of reasons for caution. This comes even as corporate America is expected to report strong quarterly earnings in the coming weeks, boosted by a weaker dollar and favorable tax conditions under the Trump administration. So it's a mixed picture. Profits look okay for now, but the appetite for bold, long-term deal-making is clearly cooling. And that is a wrap on today's edition of Genai World News. It has been a big day of stories, from oil markets to AI valuations, from Canadian politics to Greek border scandals. If you found this useful, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a show. We'll see you next time, right here on Genai World News. Stay informed, everyone.